Hey everyone, it is LSID932 on YouTube. Thank you for joining me on this next episode of Grotesquerie. This is episode 8 of season 1. I want to thank you for continuing to support these recaps and reviews. It is right now my highest viewed genre and series, so I wish to thank all of you for allowing this to happen. I greatly appreciate it. So let's get into it. When we last left the detective, and I've been saying her name wrong, it is it's Tryon. It's Detective Tryon. She just woke up out of her coma, and that was a surprise to everybody in the room. So we go to the detective's daughter who's having a lecture in front of medical students. Remember, she, in this real world, she is a doctor and she is literally, as she said, finding the cure for cancer. So a Dr. Wickham comes to her. He is her mother's therapist and he does neuroimaging. He believes that she was in a dreamlike state and not necessarily in a coma. He wants to find a way, and he wants to talk to people that were in her life to find a way to get people out of a coma. Because some comas, he said, may be dreamlike, and we could then awaken them. So he wishes to study her mother. She was the last holdout out of everybody. And the daughter's like, you know what, I will feel like crap if I didn't help. So he tells her of, the show she was on in the dream. Remember, it was called Half-Ton Trauma. And she did not receive that information very well. She was not happy at all. And we learn about that later on, either in this episode or the next. So it is Detective Lois Tyron, and she's doing physical therapy. She said, hey, I couldn't do this before I was in a coma. So why would I be able to do this now? So Dr. Charlie walks in. And the detective said, you tried to end me, and I heard all of it. And he's like, you were hallucinating. You only heard half of it. You just don't understand. And the detective's like, I want to go home. Don't touch me. I'm over all of you. I want to go home. She re-enters her hospital room, and she gets flashbacks of her violent awakening. She was shaking in the bed. The whole bed was shaking when she was coming out of her coma. So we cut to Marshall, who is sitting in front of, a tea set. And it has the faces of Prince Charles and Princess Diana on this tea set at Red's house. Oh, he said they were disasters as Red walks in with groceries. Red said she likes the royal family because, they think of the future while keeping up with the traditions of the past. She's like, we all need rituals when we can get them. He says he's not staying with Lois, the detective. He's not staying. She's awake. He's divorcing her. And she's like, can you live with that kind of decision? Can you live with that decision? And Marcia's like, why would you stay with me if I don't leave now? And she's like, the ritual of it all? She's like, don't stay because you think you may lose me. Don't just leave her because what you think I may be thinking. He says the lawyer has the papers, they're being drawn up. It's impossible to stay with her when you know so much about the bad things. He's like, she knew I wanted her gone. He said he whispered to her, I just want you to effing go away. No longer be of this world. I can't say the certain words on YouTube. So he said, if she heard the doctors, then I know she heard me. So he goes on to say he admired Prince Charles, who finally found happiness with the woman he loved, and he held Red's hand. We will put a pin in that for later. So Dr. Wickham now is interviewing Chief Megan. Remember, all this time Megan has been Sister Megan, but in the real world it is Chief Megan, who is also the detective's partner. The chief said, Detective and I, we were never adversaries. She mentored me and I listened to her while she's kind of nervously pulling at her fingers. So she said, yes, Lois blew the case with Andrea and she should have helped her sooner. And I'm like, is she doing this for the doctor? Because when Chief Megan was talking to the police officer, Jack, she didn't speak like that. She said, the detective did all she could do and she's not liable. So Megan said it was shoddy police work and she let the detective know it. And the detective showed her the same kind of respect. They had one fight before the retirement party because the detective did not want to retire and leave. And then Megan made the punch. And the doctor asked, what was the color of that punch? The doctor's hand was making like subtle things. He would say, what is the color of that punch? And it was just the gestures were just over exaggerated. And I was like, is the doctor practicing a little hypnosis? We shall see. So Megan says it was purple. He's like, oh, purple like the color of a bruise? Megan says yes. The doctor said, was that the bruising that was on Andrea's body? She said yes, she was beaten until she was unalived. And I was like, remember, in the dream state, that purple was the color of the pool at the motel that the detective and Sister Megan had to stop. So it's all making sense now. And I will do this periodically to let you know dream state and how it translates into reality, because things are just there, but they're just jumbled up. So Megan drives home. She sits in the car in the driveway for a second. You know how we all do before we go inside. Sometimes we're like, oh, let me decompress so I don't take these things into the household with me. So she walks in and a man is sitting on the couch watching sports and pouring himself a liquid beverage, kind of like how Detective Tyron was doing. So we find out his name is Justin and he says, you're late. I'm hungry. I must be having low blood sugar or something. And Megan is like, I am not in the mood for your shenanigans. And she goes in the kitchen and gets the Chinese leftovers. She puts it in the microwave and starts heating it up for her. Now I will find a sticker and place it up here so that you know when I am discussing something that may be triggering. Because we are going to talk about a DV situation right now. And once it disappears, you will know I have finished describing that scene. But please be advised, it is a trigger warning for DV, domestic violence. So he grabs her. He starts slamming her into the cupboards. Then he punches her to the ground. She pulls her pow-pow out of her purse and puts it to his mouth. Megan says, is this what you want? Because I will have a shiner from your fist if I gotta go into work tomorrow. They know about you in the precinct. Too many cries and calls for help. He's like, you don't have the bleeping balls to do that. She pulls the hammer back. She steps back from him and he is looking freaked out. Justin's eyes are bugging. And Megan tells him, get the bleep out of here. He's like, this is my house. My house, my rules. She pulls the trigger, but no bullet. I was like, whew. Megan, you're the chief now. She's like, all right, stay then and enjoy your dinner. And she throws the hot noodles at his face and he is bawling. And she leaves while he is cursing at her. Now Megan drives out to go stay at a motel. It is the same motel that the detective and Sister Megan went to. The same spot from Lois's dream. The water in the pool is purple because of the light source. The light in the water is purple. She stares at a woman who is doing laps in the pool and just looks down at it. So the clerk checks her in and is watching her face. Kind of like how Detective Tyron was watching the face of the clerk. In the dream state, the clerk was the one all bruised up and the detective was trying to help her. So the clerk looks at Chief Megan and says, would you like some ice? And she's like, just a quiet room, please. Leave me alone. Then we cut to Detective Tyron and Dr. Wickham. They're having a session. He says, are you ready to go back into the real world? And she's like, it's a lot to process. Her dreams are so real. He's like, well, we could just do a couple sessions a week. She's like, you know what? I was 6 weeks in that coma. Everything feels like a maze, and I'm working through it in my mind. Doctor says it's important, this case is so important because it tells us about the subconscious and how it plays a part in our healing and waking our body up. He was there observing her when he saw that she had brain activity on the monitor. The detective's dreams were very violent, and the doctor says when you explore it, we can unpack it and move on. He's like, we can talk for several days and go through this. And the detective is like, I don't remember talking to you for days, going over everything. And I'm like, considering the doctor said that everybody that came to visit her and was in her room contributed something to her dream state, could the killer have been someone who visited her? Put a thought in that, because that is my assessment. I think maybe the person who is doing all of this, the perpetrator, is someone who visited her. So the doctor asks, why did you put your daughter in this half-ton trauma? Detective is like, you would say that I was disgusted with her, or I've seen, because I've seen shut-ins and people lifted out of their homes. And the doctor is like, you force-fed her in your dreams. She's like, I don't know why I was so angry with her. He's like, is it possible that anger is a very easy emotion? And then when you did that, you felt ashamed. Could that be part of it? So the detective is like, I don't know why we got to talk about this. I want to go home. I want to leave all this behind me. We're not supposed to remember our dreams in a coma state. The doctor is like, you felt a lack of control in your marriage, so maybe that's why you put your husband in a coma. And you felt that Megan was doing everything right and was holier than thou, so you literally made her a nun. So the detective sits back and like, does that mean grotesquerie is me? He's like, it's probably how you see the world based on what the job has exposed you to, what you suppress, and your PTSD from the work. She's like, I looked up grotesquerie, and it means to live in a world that is grotesque and make-believe. Doctor's like, it's not make-believe, when you've lived it and you are fighting crime and sacrificing yourself to combat it. So I don't think it's make-believe. Something in me doesn't trust the doctor. Dr. Wickham and the actor playing it is doing a marvelous job, but I don't trust you, doctor, at all. The detective says, I have seen the worst of the worst of the worst, daily and endlessly. In the dreams, she was still drunk, and she's like, I'm not now. He's like, oh, well, it is a way for addicts to make sense of the shackles that they're trying to free themselves by taking their addiction into their dream state. So detective is like, well, what about Andrea? He's like, what do you think? The case was your tipping point, and it was the catalyst for you asking for help. And it turns out the detective's sponsor was Ed, her daughter's husband. He's like, yes, in the dream state, you made him a caretaker, which is fitting. How you had the affair to begin with. And detective is like, he was just there. He was just there while she was going through her sober journey, and he understood her, and he just met her where she was and gave her the acceptance and the love she wanted. So the doctor says getting sober is a shock to the system. And detective is like, are you going to let me off the hook for sleeping with my daughter's husband? He's like, only you can do that. He's like, I'm not here to judge you. So doctor says, Dr. Charlie is fascinating. He's like, how you placed him to be a priest in all of this and the perpetrator is fascinating. He's like, but I think you felt powerless. You were hearing someone who was supposed to be your ally talking about ending your life. And you put him with Megan because they were trying to take your job and your life, and you were so alone. The only one who cared was Marshall's girlfriend, and you cast her as his nurse caring for him. So remember, in the dream world, Charlie was the priest, Megan was the nun, and they were having an affair. So she placed them together, is what the doctor is saying, in her mind. And the nurse, in her dream state, is actually Marshall's mistress. So Detective's like, I didn't hate her at all. I didn't hate Red. I had some bitterness, but the woman is a saint to have to deal with Marshall over all these years. Ain't that the truth? So Dr. Maisie says, the doctor says, Maisie, your housekeeper, you made her an unaliver of children. You didn't give her your wrath like you did all the other people. You helped her, and she helped you catch the perpetrator. So Detective's like, when I met Maisie, she had chained herself to a clinic, and she was a pro-life protester. The more she wailed, the more I saw myself under the layers of grandstanding. I saw love, I saw fear, I saw hope. And the doctor's like, do you still feel hope? Detective's like, it comes and it goes. And the doctor's like, that is very wise, and let us continue this later. So we see the detective being wheeled out because she's like, I got to go. I got to get the heck up out of this hospital. And she's given a single get well balloon, which I thought was, why would you give her that while she's leaving? I'll put a pin in that because that looked very suspicious. She refused any help to get her out of the wheelchair. She lets go of the balloon, and only Megan is there to pick her up. The detective does see the bruise on Megan's face. Megan is asking her while they're driving, do you know why no one is there to pick you up? Megan, be kind, be nice. Detective is like, I figured everyone has interviewed with Dr. Wickham, so they know about my dreams, and they know how they placed in the dreams, and just her general unpleasantness. So Megan is like, I'm not your enemy. I idolized you. You want to turn me into an unaliver. The detective is like, girl, these were coma dreams. Megan's like, you don't think I pushed you out? You don't think I tried to take your job? She's like, I feel bad as it is already. And I'm feeling even worse in my subconscious. I'm not responsible for what my subconscious did. Megan is like, your generation always says you're not responsible for anything. And the detective is like, you millennials blame us for everything around you. Such professional victims. Entitled, outraged. The world is not what we did to you. I was like, woo, this is a generational battle. Generational battle. So Megan's like, let's count them, leaving us to clean up all of your messes, like the Andrea case. And Detective's like, oh, okay, this is what that is. You resent me for that case. It's not about global warming. Megan's like, I was your partner and in this because of you, but I'm not your enemy. Detective's like, clearly, you were kind enough to pick me up to tell me all of your virtues. Typical millennial self-righteousness. The detective says, typical millennial self-righteousness. You're such professional victims. You blame us for everything around you. You're entitled and outraged. This is the real world, not what we did to you. So Megan is like, let's count them. Leave us to clean up your messes, like the Andrea case. Detective's like, okay, because you resent me for that case. It's not about global warming. Megan's like, I was your partner, and I'm in this because of you. I'm not your enemy. And the detective's like, clearly, you were kind enough to pick me up and tell me all of your virtues. A typical millennial self-righteousness. Surprised you have not sued me for your dreams and your emotional distress. Megan is like, I should. Detective's like, grow the F up. And one more thing. In my dream, you had bruises like you did right now. And in the dream, you were being possessed. So break free, Megan, while you still can. I see you. So Lois walks into the home. And who's waiting for her but Maisie? Maisie welcomes her home and she gives a big hug. And Maisie's like, I told the doctor you've always helped me. He wanted to keep on digging for darkness. And it's like, everybody has a shadow. She's like, you saved me. You gave me a job. I'm not going to blame you for your dreams. But why isn't anyone here for you? And the detective is like, you are here. You're here. But she says, maybe the dreams are the closest to to the truth. Maybe my anger at everyone is the deepest truth. So the detective goes to physical therapy with Jill, and Dr. Charlie walks in. Doctor is like, you're the only patient who scoffs at positive affirmation. And detective's like, it's manipulation. I use it on folks tons of times to get them to confess. And one day, Dr. Charlie, you'll confess to me. I was like, whoa. Maisie is sitting in the PT room reading her book and looking up like, ooh. Detective's like, didn't you hear that in the coma I heard everything? Everything, doctor. And Dr. Charlie looked visibly uncomfortable. Maisie is driving detective somewhere and she says, it's not a good idea, detective. She's like, I gotta do this. And she goes to see her daughter. So Merritt is like, you sure you want to see me and not my husband? So y'all can pick up where you left off? I can give you his address. The detective says, get it all out so we can talk. So Merritt's like, something I've been meaning to tell you. I'm not going to treat you like crap because of your dreams, but it's how you see me in them. A slob living at home dependent on you. She's like, no, Mom, I have 2 degrees. And in order to deal with me in your dreams, you had to make me dependent on you. She's like, your crime is not in the dream. Let's have a come into Jesus. The detective's like, yes, I know. Sleeping with your husband. It was misplaced loneliness. It was misplaced loneliness and self-pity. It's like, it wasn't about sex. It was emotion and connection. And then, pow! She slaps the detective, her mother. She said most women would find someone outside of their circle to cheat with. You chose my partner. You're not like most women. You are something else entirely. All this time around, these perpetrators and psychopaths have rubbed off on you. You caught their disease. When I remember, you were not insane. You were once a good mother. You walked me to school. You would do things with me. That's what makes this worse. The husband's betrayal was predictable, but yours? You broke my heart. You broke my heart, Mama. I wake up most days amazed and stunned by it, but I know you don't feel the same. Now get out my house. Like, ooh, Merritt, that's your mama. I know she was disrespectful. Dang, girl. Detective gets in the car, rubbing her busted lip, and Maisie says, we should go get a vanilla milkshake. I told you it was a bad idea. Maisie, not the time. But the detective chuckles and says, I need a new beginning to go on. So let's get that milkshake. And that ends episode 8 of Grotesquerie, season 1. I hope you will enjoy this video, that you will certainly join me for the next episode once I upload it. Please like, share, subscribe, and just be kinder to yourself today than you were yesterday.